Welcome, everybody, to the Lakers Outsiders podcast. We have a lot to talk about today. Gary Kester here hosting, as always, joined by, I feel like half of our staff today, but I'm just going to go off from my left to right. Dylan Heiser joins us today. Hani Amadian is with us, and Jacob Root is also here to talk about the All-Star. Okay, no, we're not going to talk much about the All-Star game, but what happened after the All-Star game. Huge news in the NBA. The NBA trade deadline is on Thursday, but the Kings got started early. So the Kings send DeMarcus Cousins to the New Orleans Pelicans, and to no surprise, the Lakers tried to get in on the Cousins sweepstakes. All right, let's just dive right into this. Jacob, I'm going to send it to you first. What was your initial reaction when you saw the Lakers were trying to get Cousins again?
The initial reaction was, I wasn't too worried. I was one of the few. I saw Lakers Twitter kind of melting down a little bit. Basically because Mitch and Jim, well, mainly Mitch, had said so many things about just keeping the core together. But, I think when it came out that the Lakers were involved, we already knew that Buddy Hield was like the headliner for the New Orleans package. So I was almost a little bit kind of optimistic that maybe we'd fleece them. But in the end, I'm just happy that we didn't do anything too rash. I'm really happy that we kind of made Ingram untouchable, at least in this circumstance. So it was a good day.
Yeah, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, Ramona Shelburne, and Chris Mannix, there was a number of national reporters on this story. The Lakers, the deal breaker was they would not include Brandon Ingram in a trade package for DeMarcus Cousins. Hani, are the Lakers in the wrong here to not include Ingram in a deal, or should they have gone ahead and pulled the trigger on that?
I think it really depends on what else the deal was, and we don't really know. We don't know what else would have been included. It's obviously not just Ingram because it wouldn't have worked under the CBA, and because I was going to say because the Kings would want more, but they did also just trade Boogie for Buddy Hield.
It very well might have been a straight-up swap.
Maybe. But so one thing, and we were talking about this as everything was coming up, but one thing I was thinking of was that the Kings would probably want to get D'Angelo Russell and Brandon Ingram because they're the two Lakers young guys that probably have the most potential to be a star. And my view of the whole thing was that I would be willing to move one of those guys and any of the other young guys to get Cousins, but I wouldn't be willing to move both of them. Because I think if you do, then you're stuck with kind of like the Kings situation where you have Cousins surrounded by a bunch of guys that are fine but not good enough to get you to the playoffs.
Yeah, and that was the big thing. That was kind of the topic of discussion, whether to include Ingram and or Russell. Dylan, what are your thoughts on this deal? I know Lakers Twitter is very divided on this topic right now, and there's a lot of back and forth going on. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think the Lakers should have just gone all in on it, or are you happy with what they did?
I'm pleased with what they did. I'm kind of how I kind of feel a lot how Jacob felt about once we heard that Buddy Hield was going to be the headliner for that package. I was thinking maybe they can slide in and just get maybe Clarkson or Larry Nance or Julius Randle involved and maybe be able to come out with Cousins. But I was glad that they didn't do anything that would jeopardize losing D'Angelo or possibly Ingram. Mm-hmm. So I'm pleased that they didn't do that and they made Ingram untouchable. I feel like that might be a nice confidence booster for him going into the second half of the season. So.
I was just about to say that, and I'll throw this back to Jacob. Obviously, I guess this depends on how Ingram's going to look at it, right? He can see it as well. Like this, my team wouldn't trade me for an all-star player. Or do you see it, I mean, it's possible that he sees this as like, wow, I really need to pan out now. Like, I've really got to develop because there's a lot of pressure, so that we don't look back on this and see it as a mistake, right?
I haven't seen any national news writers yet say that the Lakers put too much pressure on Brandon Ingram by not including him in the Boogie trade. But
the Kobe locker,
I was gonna say the Kobe locker. That's a little too much though.
Too far. And calling him and referring or comparing him to Giannis when Luke was asked about it, just too far. But I mean, yeah, it really just depends on how Ingram takes it. I mean, based on his personality and what we know, it's got to be a confidence boost. I mean, I think he already knows that there's a certain amount of pressure on him, but really as a group as a whole. But yeah, I mean, basically what you said. I mean, when you're going into a trade and you don't want to, and you hear that the trade broke down because the team didn't want to trade you personally, I mean, that can't be anything but a confidence boost for you. I mean, that I don't know that Ingram was necessarily feeling any of the pressure or the heat or anything, but I mean, if he were, there's nothing more that would kind of ease his worries or his fears than not trading him for Boogie.
Yeah. Welcome to the NBA, rookie. By the way, his first trade rumor that I think he was involved in. But no, I mean it's gotta be huge for a 19-year-old kid, right?
It's kind of got to be like big that he was even like the center point, or like he would probably be the centerpiece of what the Kings wanted for Cousins. Like Cousins, a multiple-time All-Star, one of the best bigs in the NBA. If the Kings are like looking for you as the centerpiece in their return for him, I mean, granted they didn't get a great return, but if they're looking for you personally, like that's got to be, you're doing something right.
I think if the Kings wanted to trade for me, I would immediately get in the gym and work as hard as I possibly could to get better. Because I'm like,
yeah, it's actually all just reverse psychology. Like, oh god, the Kings want me. I got to get good now.
Right? It's just like I think if I'm the Lakers, like, oh, you want Ingram? Okay, like who else on our roster do you want? Like, who else do you guys like?
Let's leak all this at once and make sure they all get in the gym,
guys. No, but Hani, I mean, obviously the Pelicans had a much different situation than the Lakers have right now. So it's really unfair to compare kind of the package the Lakers could have thrown together compared to what the Pelicans got him for, right?
Yeah, the Pelicans were in the playoffs, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Yeah. They have Anthony Davis, who's a multiple-time All-Star. He's one of the best players in the league. They have Drew Holiday, who's kind of a really underrated good point guard who's, I think, 26, 27 years old. They got guys that want to win right now, and they got a franchise that's hasn't done great since it's been around, but again, they've been in the playoffs a couple of years ago. It makes sense for them to go all in and get a really good player, push for the playoffs, and then they're probably not going to do too much this year, but next year when they have a really good team, they're going to be making some noise.
Yeah,
the Lakers.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to just say the Lakers, it just doesn't make sense because Cousins doesn't make them a really good team right away. The only benefit really would be that it would make them a free agent destination again, and they could sign good players, but they also don't really have that much money to sign them. So,
yeah, and Dylan, that's kind of the scary part about it, right? Is that even with Cousins, the Lakers probably aren't going to get into the playoffs this year. And even if they are, it's going to be the 8th seed where they get destroyed by the Warriors in the first round. So you'd be putting pretty much all your eggs in the basket of next season, right? You're banking on one season of Cousins to try and convince him to stay. And, I mean, it's kind of similar to when they traded for Dwight Howard, right?
Oh, definitely. Like that was the one thing that I was skeptical about was we don't want to get into another Dwight situation and end up giving up assets for somebody that's just not going to sign long term. And like Hani said, he's not going to make us like an immediate playoff team right away. So I mean, it still would all come down to the development of the young guys, like how the Pelicans, they have Anthony Davis, so they already have 2 building blocks that they can try to push that team to be a contender. But the Lakers, you don't want to give up one of your young assets that you don't really have too much of right now with the lack of picks and stuff, just for another rental.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the lack of picks because, Jacob, that's kind of where the situations also really differ is, the Pelicans have established talent, especially a superstar on their roster already, but they also had draft picks that they could trade, and the Lakers don't have that because of their pick situation right now.
Yeah, I was ready to jump in and make that very point. The situations differ a lot for the fact that New Orleans already has a superstar. You're pairing the one you have with another one, which, hopefully down the road is kind of what you want hope that the situation the Lakers can get into. But yeah, I mean, even for how much we kind of make fun of the package that they got, I mean, we don't really have a first-round pick to trade.
Mm-hmm.
The expiring contracts we have aren't quite as good as what they got. I mean, maybe Clarkson's better than Buddy Hield, but we also don't have somebody probably as good as Tyreek Evans to throw in the deal as well. So, I mean, it's hard to compare the situations or the packages.
Well, and Clarkson's on a much different contract than Hield is as well. Like Hield's still on he's a rookie, so he's going to be on a very cheap contract for a few years, and Clarkson's I think at $12.5 million right now for the next 4 years. So yeah, that's another situation that's just very different. But no, and the other thing with this too is, I mean, I'll say this for the Kings, like it depends on how you value certain guys. Obviously, they value Buddy Hield much higher than a lot of other people do.
Everybody.
Yeah, just and that's coming from Jacob, who I think loved Buddy Hield coming into the
only
draft.
person who is a bigger fan of Buddy Hield than the Kings is Buddy Hield's mom, probably.
And even she might be wondering what the Kings are doing.
She's probably scratching her head a little bit right now, too.
She's probably actually upset. She's like, damn it. Like, her son's stuck in Sacramento now.
You just went to the franchise where young shooting guards go to die.
And you just went from New Orleans to Sacramento.
Yeah. Hani, with the thing with DeMarcus Cousins, he's such a polarizing player, right? Because he's so supremely talented, but you never know what you're going to get as far as kind of his emotions, right? He's kind of always on that threshold for technical fouls and getting suspended and things like that. I mean, so it's fair to be, I guess, skeptical about trading a lot of pieces for a player like that, right?
Yeah, and I would say especially so for a young team, again, like the Lakers. I go back and forth on Cousins a lot. I like him, and I think a lot of the stuff that he gets a bad rep for isn't necessarily his fault. I think the Kings have a lot to do with that. But at the same time, he's not faultless either. And, he's already been suspended once this season for technicals. If he gets one more technical, he's suspended another game.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff is big. And you see him on the Kings on a bad team doing that sort of stuff. You have to kind of wonder if he were on the Lakers, were also a bad team and have had their own issues in the front office as well. You could kind of see the same sort of scenario pan out. And when you got a bunch of young guys that kind of need more leadership in the locker room and need, guys that teach them kind of the ways in the NBA, then it is a risk to get Cousins. I think it's worth it because he's such a good player, but you have to kind of consider that as well.
I don't know, man. We got like $130+ million worth of veteran leadership on the roster. No, but I mean, that's a completely fair point, because there's so much youth on the roster and, there's not a ton of veteran guys to really look up to. There's a couple, obviously, but I feel like Mozgov right now is kind of in a very delicate state because he's just been relegated to bench warmer from being a starter. And then, you've got Luol Deng there. You got Lou Williams for the time being. Who knows if he gets dealt at the trade deadline or not. But Dylan, another thing to factor in here is the Lakers have a rookie head coach. Like, that's a big deal if they would have traded for Cousins.
Yeah. The Kings had a different scenario where they had Jaeger, who, He has coached before. He's been on playoff teams. He knows what he wants out of his superstars. And weirdly enough, he seemed to like Cousins a lot, which I thought I didn't know how that dynamic would work. But yeah, Luke Walton, it's a totally different thing. I mean, I'm sure he's probably dealt with it in some areas with the Warriors in his little stint for Steve Kerr, but it'd be a lot different when the focal point of your team is just surrounded by a bunch of, young, inexperienced players and some veterans that are getting paid quite a bit of money. So it'd be difficult for Luke to handle. And I'd be interested to see how Zubac would handle that, because he's supposed to be the future center for the Lakers and the franchise piece now, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we already have a superstar center, so why do we
Right, exactly. So he might just go on a rant and try to get traded right off the team,
He's just gonna storm into old Mitchell Kupchak's office and demand a trade. No, it's a lot to ask out of your rookie head coach, and like you mentioned, I think he's kind of been around players like that. Like Draymond Green, for instance, is a very emotional guy, but it's different when you're on a team that's winning than with Cousins. If you plant Cousins on this team minus say 2 young players, I mean they're still about what they are. They're probably a little bit better, but and that's just a lot to ask out of your rookie head coach, but. Luke's a pretty charismatic guy, so I would assume to some extent he would have an effect, but
I think that he would.
Cousins has had a lot of head coaches.
Yeah, he might be able to handle it pretty well, because even when the news broke that the Lakers were going to sign Luke, a lot of the you saw like players like Draymond and like Clay and Steph, like all those guys went to bat for him, and they showed their support for him and how much they appreciated what he did for them. So, I mean, he might be able to handle it, but still, it's a really delicate situation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a scary situation because DeMarcus Cousins isn't a free agent this summer, but Jacob, he's a free agent next summer. So you're potentially trading, 2+ pieces of your young core for a guy that could leave in 14 months. And, I mean, how far back would that set the franchise if that happened?
Well, we're still trying to recover from the Dwight trade. And I'd imagine it would be – I mean, you're basically going into a similar, I guess, situation. You get Boogie for longer, but, I mean, like you guys have said, you're giving up a lot. It's not like you have a ton of cap space this summer, and it's not really like there's – anybody that you can really use it on. I mean, there's not kind of the big, huge names out there. Gordon Hayward isn't going to, put you over the top or anything like that. So, yeah, I think between that and kind of what you guys were talking about, the situations matter. I think with Boogie, I mean, it's a great situation for him now. He's going to a franchise where he's not the face of the franchise, like Anthony Davis is. The pressure isn't going to be on him. You have a veteran coach, some veteran players around. That's why I also thought Boston might make sense, because they seem to have a good kind of culture around the team there and whatnot, even if they do have a young head coach.
Can't trade Terry Rozier, though.
Yeah. As long as Terry Rozier, as long as he wasn't in the package, it would have made sense for the Celtics. But yeah, with the Lakers, you have a really young team, a young coach, and a mess of a front office right now, unfortunately. So I think there was just a whole lot of issues. Unless you were going to get Boogie for, a steal of a package, I don't think the Lakers were ever really going to. I don't know that they were ever very seriously in talks with Sacramento.
Yeah, according to, I think, Ramona Shelburne, she said that once the Lakers said they wouldn't include Ingram, talks really kind of just died after that. I mean, which makes sense, because I think if you're including Ingram, you're probably throwing in Randall and Clarkson, I would imagine, in that deal. And because like we said, the Lakers didn't have picks they could trade. They could trade some second rounders, but I mean, how much value do those really have?
I mean, the best case scenario is you try to trade Lou right away for a first-round pick and throw a late first-round pick in there, but I mean, that's not helping things too much.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's just so many different factors that go into a trade for the Lakers, at least with Cousins, because of their pick situation, because of where they're at, because of his contract, because of the front office situation. There's so many different angles to this, but. Hani, say the Lakers pulled the trigger and they traded, let's say, Randall, Ingram, and Clarkson to make the money work for Cousins and fillers to make the money work or whatever. And say the Lakers, clear space by getting rid of Tarek Black's non-guaranteed contract. They trade Lou, whatever. They clear enough space to sign a max guy this summer. Do you think the Lakers, without those guys, say with just D'Angelo and DeMarcus Cousins, is that enough to be like a prime free agent destination?
I think Boogie gets you a lot, and because the perception of the Lakers might not be as great as it always has been. I think it's still better than the Kings. So
definitely now.
Yeah.
You mean people aren't lining up to play with Buddy Hield?
I mean, if Jacob wants to make his NBA debut, now's the time.
I was going to announce it at the end of this pod, but I've signed for the Kings, guys.
But yeah, so I think it would definitely give them a shot at free agents. I don't know if it makes them much of a destination without actually winning games first, and that's tough to do if your two best players are just Cousins and Russell, and then you don't really have much left after that.
Yeah, and you're talking about like no depth after that. So, that's really, really tough to kind of gauge. And I guess, Dylan, is it fair to say that nobody has signed – because Cousins obviously hasn't been able to attract other star players himself, but is that more on him, or is it more – because this is obviously before today, because now we know the answer. But before, do you think that was more on Cousins or just because of the Kings franchise itself?
I'm leaning towards the Kings franchise just because the way that they've handled like their draft picks and like their free agent negotiations in the future or in the past doesn't really show any signs like they've been doing anything the right way to try to get talent around him. I mean, so I would lean more towards them. But it's tough to say because like Cousins, how we talked about, he has, he might have some issues like with his attitude and stuff like that. And they've had cap space and stuff, so they've been trying to go after these players, but it's never really worked out. But I can't really seem to think that it would be anything other than the front office there. They just don't seem like they're being run very, very adequately right now.
Yeah, their draft was very, very weird this last season because they already had Cousins and Willie Cauley-Stein in place, which, I mean, this is good for Cauley-Stein because now he'll actually get playing time. I think he has needed more of because I think he's a very intriguing prospect. So,
and more importantly, playing time as a center and not a power forward.
Right. Like he's going to be in a more natural position. He's going to finally get some opportunity. But yeah, like they didn't do much in free agency. They got, I think, Aaron Aflalo, Costa Koufos, I think Anthony Tolliver. Like they got some. Go ahead.
Even like their draft picks in the past, like guys like Jimmer, Nick Stauskas, they traded the eighth pick for Papagiannis, I think his name is. Papagiannis and
Papa John's.
right. And
it's just Giannis' dad, guys.
Yeah. So they haven't been able to surround him with any talent through the draft, and I mean they haven't been able to do too much for him in free agency either. So yeah, it just seems like they're kind of a mess right now.
Yeah, like I said, their draft was very weird because, like I said, they had Cousins and Cauley-Stein, and then they went with Papagiannis, and then they drafted Skal Labissiere, so they went with another big guy. Yeah,
totally forgot he existed.
And then they signed Costa Koufos later on in free agency. So it's like Yeah, no, they're just their construction of their roster has been very, very strange.
They even had Isaiah Thomas and just let him walk away.
Yeah, I mean, I get going best player available to a certain extent, but man, that's pushing it to a level that just doesn't make sense.
Hey,
all right,
by the way, quick thing, the vertical. This doesn't really change anything that we've talked about, but the vertical's reporting that Lou Williams was also discussed between the Kings and Lakers as part of the trade.
Oh, that's interesting because I know they wanted, at least according to Woj, they wanted expiring contracts and picks and young talent, and he's none of those. So, no, that's interesting. But he's still obviously going to be on the market. I guess we can talk about Lou a little bit. We can break away from Cousins just here for a second. Jacob, I mean, I guess we'll go around the horn here and just try and put a percentage on the likelihood of Lou being dealt before the deadline.
A percentage. I mean, I think it's really high. I know the Lakers historically, or I guess in recent years, haven't been active at the trade deadline, but I don't think a situation as kind of perfect or ideal as this one has been there. If I had to put a percentage, I would say probably 75, 80%, something like that. I really think it just makes too much sense. They've talked this year. I know Luke has pretty openly about kind of building for the future and whatnot. And at this point, Lou, there's no value to having Lou on the team past this year. He's kind of blocking the development of some guys a bit, and he's winning games when you really need to be losing games. So
yeah, he's saved the Lakers from a lot of blowouts, I think, this year.
Yeah,
which good on him. And I will say this before I go on to Hani, but Lou has been fantastic this year. We're going to talk obviously about Lou being traded, but I just want to say he has been sensational this year. I've actually enjoyed watching him play because he's been efficient. He's scored extremely well. He's just been a fun player to watch because he's been just shooting the ball really well and scoring efficiently. So just want to throw that out there.
Better than I think really anybody envisioned him being this year.
And that's the difference.
Preseason.
That's the difference too between trading him this year and last year. Is his stock is much higher this year, right, Hani?
Yeah, I mean he's really put the Lakers in a pickle. There's the idea that you can trade him and get some decent return, and hopefully build for the future and get more playing time for guys like D'Angelo Russell and even like Jordan Clarkson. But the other part of it is that he's been a really good leader for the Lakers this year. He's been totally professional. He's been fine with coming off the bench and not necessarily playing as much as the young guys all the time. And he's made them a better team. And as much as a lot of people want to tank and get the pick, and there's valid reasons for that, winning games is also important for young guys.
Yeah, just
to try and learn and get better.
And they want to see those results, and you're trying to reestablish that type of culture. I mean, I think it does. I think I agree. I think it means a lot for young guys if they're actually winning games.
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of one of the big criticisms of what the Sixers were doing under Sam Hinkie, was that they were so intent on tanking and getting assets that they weren't winning. And the worry was that all these young guys that they had would get used to being on bad teams, and then they wouldn't really learn to become a good team on their own. So I think that is a valid concern. That said, I think the Lakers are in a position where their young guys are kind of progressing pretty well, and they do have enough other bets around that it's okay to trade Lou because his stock is so high and you can get fairly good return for him.
I mean, according to Twitter, they're not all-stars yet, so they're obviously busts. So I don't know, man.
20-year-old is not an all-star. Please trade him.
According to Twitter.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, also according to Twitter, the Lakers should trade Lou Williams for John Wall. So.
And a first rounder, right?
Well, I mean, if the offer's there, they probably should do that.
I mean, if the Kings all of a sudden take over, Kings ownership takes over the Wizards, it might be a possibility, honestly.
Honestly, that might be a better deal.
You might want to look into trading Lou Williams for, like, I don't know who the next best player available on the Kings is now. Willie Cauley-Stein or something. But I mean, they clearly value Buddy Hield a lot, but try to just fleece the Kings again or something.
Seriously, I'd call him and be like, so what do you want for old Cauley-Stein there?
Well, just one thing I would build off of what Hani was saying, and it's something that I know I believe Harrison has said on his pod before, or on Locked On Lakers. There's a difference between the Lakers winning because kind of the young core was the main factor, and the Lakers winning because Lou Williams dropped 30 points and led them in a big comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of them, with the young core, there's like development. They get a lot of confidence. The other one, if Lou Williams is dropping 30, then that means probably one of Russell or Clarkson isn't playing in the fourth. Things like that are happening. And it isn't really – I mean, on top of stunting the development, you're winning games that are going to hurt your draft odds and stuff like that. So I think, like I was saying, it just makes too much sense to trade him.
Yeah, Dylan, all signs seem to be kind of pointing to Lou being dealt this time around. I mean, what percentage would you put on it I guess, before Thursday's deadline?
I guess before the deadline, I'd probably say around 70. I'm not maybe as high as Jacob, but it just makes too much sense. Yeah, it's pretty close. It just makes too much sense. Like he was saying, it'd be a win-win just because it would help them have a better chance at tanking, being able to keep that pick. And also you might be able to get another, like, a late first round pick in return for him, or a nice young piece or something like that. So it just makes it's a win-win there, and you'll be able to develop some of the youth a little more and get them a little more playing time. Because, I mean, you have veterans behind them. Like, I mean, Calderon can play the backup minutes if needed, or Clarkson can run point guard a little bit more for that backups. But, I mean, it just makes a little too much sense to do. But that being said, I'm not entirely sure that they're going to do it just because I'm a little skeptical on how they handle in-season trades. They haven't been super active in that. So maybe they'll move them in, like, the off-season or something like that, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely possible because, like you said, I think the last in-season trade they made was the Steve Blake deal a few years back for Bazemore and Marshawn Brooks.
That's next Kobe Bryant, Marshawn Brooks to you.
Wonder what that guy's up to. Like,
he helped us win a Celtic game, so.
Oh yeah, that's true. He had a big game against the Celtics.
That's true.
Laker legend.
That was their first game, I believe. Him and Bazemore both played out of their minds and helped us beat.
Ryan Kelly had a big game too, right? Was that the same year?
Oh my God, yeah, probably.
See how far the Lakers have come, though? Like, we're talking about those guys compared to, really good 20-year-old prospects.
Right, and that's also, like,
Kelly is a legend.
as they haven't made too many in-season trades, but for the longest time, their best asset was Ryan Kelly. So, I don't know. There wasn't too much wiggle room there.
Yeah, no, it's pretty remarkable where the Lakers kind of sit now, considering when you look at 2013 and all the picks that they still owed and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, look when Dwight left. Just look at the roster. Like, Ryan Kelly probably was our best young player.
Yeah,
and it's like
Marshall.
Yeah, Kendall Marshall maybe.
Man, Kendall.
Darius Morris, guys. Andrew Mini Mamba Godblock.
Yeah, I mean, these are what we're talking about as our quote-unquote best prospects. And then look where we're at now. So if you're feeling down, just look at that.
Yeah, and I will say this. I think it's completely fair to, have doubt about the Lakers core, that they're not going to be like superstar talents or all-star talents or whatever the case may be. I think that's completely fair. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and Ingram's really struggled offensively this year, although I think, to be fair, he's super young. He doesn't turn 20 until September. So he's super young, hasn't really grown into his body yet. and he's shown a little bit of kind of everything else besides scoring, which was what he was great at in college. So that in itself is encouraging. And like I said, it's fair to have some doubt about this core, but at the same time, their top two prospects are 20 years old and 19 years old.
Yeah.
And Zubats is 19 years old too. Like, it's completely too early to really judge this core. So I don't, kind of going back to DeMarcus Cousins here, I don't necessarily blame the Lakers for not wanting to pull the trigger on that, because they're in it for the long haul, right? Like, because Cousins isn't a type of player, like, as talented as he is, he's arguably the most talented big man in the league right now, at least offensively. He's not like a LeBron James or, Kevin Durant, like a guy that you put on the team and you can pencil him into the playoffs. He's not a guy like that. So I don't know, this whole situation, like I've said earlier on the podcast, there's just so many different things that go into this. It's not really as clear cut as just trading for, a top 10 player in the league, because Cousins is a very unique case. So I don't know. It's a mess. It's very complicated. And I mean, Lakers Twitter is going to debate this for probably a while, I think. But yeah, no, this is crazy. This is a nice little primer for the next 4 days that await leading up to the trade deadline. So,
and one other takeaway I had going back to the Boogie thing that I forgot about. I think I can't remember who. Somebody pointed it out on Twitter, but if you're in favor of Mitch and Jim staying around after this year, I think this kind of bodes well for that. Basically, if Mitch and Jim were kind of feeling the pressure, feeling the heat, that they really needed to do something to kind of save their job or something like that, then I think that they would have been a little more open to moving Ingram or just really any part of the young core to get Boogie. Because, I mean, the odds are, or I guess the players like Boogie aren't available often.
Right.
So when they're available, it's hard to say no to a trade for him, especially when the Lakers have, apparently been discussing a trade for him for the last 2 or 3 years. It's hard to say no to that. So the fact that Mitch and Jim, like you said, kind of stuck to their guns and didn't move Ingram or any of the young core, I guess that kind of bodes well for their future with the Lakers, or if not, at least they're kind of looking out for the future of the Lakers, even if they're going to be gone.
Yeah, and if they end up being fired or whatever this offseason, I will applaud them even more for not panicking and going all in on a move like this and still thinking kind of bigger picture here with the Lakers future. And I think we kind of, superstar talents and being able to acquire one doesn't come around all that often. So, I understand where, kind of half of the debate is coming from, where it's like, just do whatever it takes to get Cousins. I understand. I really do. But at the same time, there's so much value in having a young core that can grow together on, cost-controlled contracts. Because not saying that the Lakers are ever going to be, like, this core is ever going to be the Warriors, but you look at kind of how they built the team, and the Lakers are following kind of a similar blueprint to where I think they want this core to develop, and that once you get to that point, probably not this summer, maybe next summer, like, that's your selling point to free agents, is like, we're one piece away from being really good with this group. And like, to get Cousins, you're talking about breaking up that core. And then so you get, I don't know, it's just kind of a complicated situation. And I think it's easier to sell, a long-term future with the young guys than it would be with Cousins, a guy that could leave after one season. So, because like, if I was a superstar, I'm not going to a team that, it's Cousins and then you've got like Luol Deng, Timofey Mozgov, and that's it. And Cousins can leave after 1 year. Hell no, I'm not signing 4 years with that situation. Oh, yeah. So I applaud Mitchell, and James Buss for just not panicking. I mean, I get going after it, and you've got to do your due diligence, but if you don't want to sell too much for a guy that can leave you in 14 months, I don't blame him for that. But that is an interesting kind of thing to take into account, is kind of the future of those guys in their current roles with the front office. So anything else you guys want to talk about before we sign off here? Anything else you just wanted to add to the discussion?
Yeah, the Kings should hire Magic. I don't think he could do worse.
There were a number of teams lining up for his services. Didn't you know that? They were probably one of them.
He's the best GM. Everybody knows it.
The deals he's going to make are huge.
Huge.
I mean, the Kings are in the business of going after former Lakers to help run the franchise. Shots to Shaq.
That's true. That's true. Are they going to go after Kobe next?
Oh, God.
No, Magic's already got that on lock. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Vlade is a former Laker and a former Laker in a different way, if you think about
they should go after Robert Horry, I think, right?
They never pay attention to where Robert Horry's at on the court.
I bet you he's just not allowed in the city of Sacramento still.
I hope every time Robert Horry gets off a plane going into Sacramento, he does that little hands behind the back strut that he did after he hit the shot. Just kind of bounces off the plane.
Just skips around town.
Yeah, and into Sacramento. I hope he does that every time.
He gets off the plane like that, and he just walks back.
Exactly. Everybody just giving him weird looks.
Yeah, no, it's a very, like I said, it's a very complex situation with the Lakers and Boogie if they were to trade for him, but maybe this finally breaks the link between those two, though. Now that he's with another team, and well, I guess we'll see. We'll see if if some trade rumors pop up next year between the Lakers and Cousins, I think we're just gonna have to expect it to happen annually after that, right? It's
yeah. I hope this is the end of it. It was exhausting to follow that every year around the draft time. New Lakers Kings rumor. So yeah. No, it's. We'll see. Maybe the Lakers will move on to somebody else. Maybe a certain player that's in Indiana right now. No, fam. I already signed with the Kings. Sorry, guys.
R.I.P. Jacob.
Just as long as you're not a shooting guard, you might be okay.
He could be the one that cherry picks down at the other end of the court. 4 and 5.
Exactly.
Your offensive ratings going to the chart.
I'm Indiana's version of LaMelo Ball.
All right. I think that's going to do it for us, unless you guys wanted to throw in anything else before we sign off.
Nope.
No, sir. Right. I think we covered just about everything. If not, it's probably something that we're going to talk about on Twitter and stuff. I'm sure people are in our notifications already, telling us either we're stupid or something.
Okay, there's actually just one thing that I guess I could add. I don't know how much of a possibility it is, but with the trade to New Orleans, Cousins can't sign the Supermax there. So, it might make the Lakers a little more of a possibility in free agency in 2018, just because they'll be able to offer him better, more comparable value money-wise there. And also, it makes Drew Holiday maybe a little more attainable since they're going to have to deal out to re-sign Cousins in 2018.
Yeah, they could be looking at luxury tax dollars if they're paying all three of those guys max money. So
yeah.
Also could be a team you could swindle some assets from in case they want to give their crappy contracts away. Like Solomon Hill or Omar Ashik or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, God. Yes, we need Omar Ashik to go with Timothy Moscow.
Yeah, Twin Towers.
Oh.
Well, and obviously you wouldn't be able to get a 2017 first from New Orleans anymore, which is a bummer. But I guess that goes back to kind of Lou and why you would trade for a first rounder this year. It's because this looks like a very promising draft, even if you have a late first round pick. So we got like less than 4 days, man. Less than 4 days. Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time, 1 p.m. my time. I don't know if we have any central timers on the site, but man, yeah, definitely turn on notifications for like Wojnarowski, Mark Stein, and all those guys, because we're already off.
Don't do that.
We're off to a fast start for the trade deadline. So I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. This is kind of late and kind of short notice. I don't know if we expected a blockbuster deal to go down coming into today, but so thank you guys for joining me. You can find all of our podcasts and all of our content on LakersOutsiders.com. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at Lakers Outsiders, as well as on Instagram. It's where we'll send kind of all of our graphics, and Grant Goldberg kind of does a lot of the Photoshops for us. You can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and iTunes. YouTube probably the safer bet right now, because iTunes has been I'm not even going to go there because I've got some choice words about iTunes, but YouTube will be where everything's live, and then it'll obviously stay there after. So you can follow me on Twitter at Gary Kester. Dylan, you are at DA Heiser, I believe. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm proud of myself for remembering that. Hani has a relatively new it's just at HONIAHM. And then Jacob is creative like myself and is at Jacob Rude. So you can follow us all there. Like I said, you can follow Lakers Outsiders on all those platforms. So thank you for everybody that tuned in. I apologize we didn't ask for any questions. Figured we had a lot to talk about today, so I didn't want to go too long. But thank you guys for tuning in. We had a pretty big audience today, and we really appreciate that. We always appreciate the feedback. So hope to be on a podcast here soon. I'm sure hopefully the Lakers will give us something to talk about before the trade deadline's up. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you guys next time.